The air inside the Staples Center wasn't just electric. It was pressurized. You could feel the weight of it pressing down on the canvas before a single note of music hit the PA system. This wasn't the match the world had bought tickets for. The original marquee Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch had been shattered days prior by a stray punch and a chaotic backstage brawl. The disappointment was palpable, a physical thing hanging in the rafters. But when the lights cut and the first distorted chords of bad reputation tore through the arena, that disappointment instantly mutated into something sharper: anxiety. Ronda Rousey marched down the ramp, but the usual confident scowl was different tonight. There was a hesitation in her stride, a flicker of acknowledgement that the ground beneath her had shifted. She wasn't walking into a prize fight. She was walking into a replacement killer. The commentary team's voices dropped an octave, shifting from hype to hushed concern. They knew what we all knew. Charlotte Flair wasn't just a substitute. She was the genetic superior, the queen, stripped of her title and looking for a reason to hurt someone. When Charlotte emerged, she didn't pose. She stalked. The robe was shed not with pageantry, but with the urgency of someone rolling up their sleeves for a street fight. The fans, usually split in their loyalties, fell into a strange, buzzing murmur. It was the sound of a collective realization that we were about to witness something that wasn't in the script. The bell rang, but it felt less like a start and more like a warning shot. The atmosphere was thick with the promise of violence, the kind that leaves a mark long after the broadcast ends. We thought we were watching a wrestling match. We were wrong. We were watching an execution being drafted in real time. The technical exchange that opened the bout was deceptive. It was fluid, crisp, almost polite, a lie told by two masters of their craft to lull the building into a false sense of security. But the veneer cracked the moment they hit the mat. This wasn't grappling, it was erosion. Charlotte Flair, usually methodical, was wrestling with a frenetic, desperate energy. She targeted Ronda's base with a cruelty that felt personal. Every stomp, every wrench of the joint was designed to dismantle the very thing that made Rousey dangerous: her explosive power. Then came the moment that sucked the oxygen out of the arena. Charlotte locked it in. The figure-8 leg lock. It wasn't just a submission. It was a torture device applied with malicious intent. The camera zoomed in on Ronda's face, usually a mask of stoic focus, now twisted into a map of pure agony. The bridge was high, the torque on the knee sickening. This was the brutal hold of the night, a maneuver that had retired lesser competitors. The referee hovered, ready to call it, his hand trembling over the canvas. For what felt like an eternity, Rousey didn't move. She didn't scramble. She simply survived. She could see the internal bargaining in her eyes, the realization that tapping out would mean more than a loss. It would be a confirmation that she didn't belong. With a guttural scream that the microphones barely caught, she rolled. She didn't use technique. She used pure, ugly survival instinct to reverse the pressure. The hold was broken, but the damage was done. She rolled to the outside, clutching a leg that looked like it no longer belonged to her. The crowd didn't cheer the escape. They gasped. They had just seen the invincibility of the baddest woman on the planet evaporate in the span of 30 seconds. Survival, however, has a cost. The match spilled to the outside, and the rules of engagement dissolved entirely. This is where the story shifted from a contest of athletics to a theater of cruelty. Charlotte, frustrated by Rousey's refusal to stay down, looked at the kendo stick lying under the ring, not as a weapon, but as a solution. The disqualification bell rang, but it sounded distant, irrelevant. The match was over, but the violence was just beginning. The first crack of the bamboo stick against Ronda's ribs sounded like a gunshot. The audience flinched. The second shot was louder. By the third, the crowd's confusion had morphed into a bloodthirsty roar. Charlotte Flair wasn't just attacking an opponent. She was exercising her own demons on Ronda's body. The referee waved his arms, pleading for order, but he was a ghost to them. Charlotte threw him aside like unwanted furniture. She dragged Ronda back into the ring, not to pin her, but to finish her. Rousey, the woman who had dominated mixed martial arts, who had walked through fire in the octagon, was reduced to a huddled mass in the center of the ring. The visual was jarring. The commentary team stopped calling moves and started pleading for medical attention. Then came the chair. Charlotte wrapped it around Ronda's neck, stepping onto it with a cold, dead-eyed stare that chilled the millions watching at home. It was a stomping of the neck that felt illegal even for a no-rules environment. The hold she had survived earlier was physical. This new assault was psychological. It was a public dismantling of a legend. When the cameras cut away, the narrative is supposed to end. But for Ronda Rousey, that's when the real weight settled in. The footage of her leaving the arena that night tells a story the broadcast missed. She wasn't selling an injury. She was helped up the ramp, welts rising on her skin in angry purple lines, tears mixing with the sweat on her face. These weren't tears of pain. They were tears of shock. The backstage area, usually a hive of noise and movement, reportedly fell silent as she passed through the curtain. Sources present that night described a locker room walking on eggshells. Producers, the writers, the other talent, no one knew what to say. They had just watched their golden goose get cooked in a way that wasn't entirely sanctioned. The line between performance and assault had been blurred so aggressively that it left everyone uncomfortable. Ronda sat in the medical wing, ice packs strapped to her ribs, staring at the floor. The fan reaction online was immediate and venomous. The same people who cheered her arrival were now sharing gifs of her beatdown with glee. The media chaos was instant. Headlines didn't ask who won. They asked, is Ronda okay? And did Charlotte go too far? The pressure on Rousey's family, watching from the front row, was visible. Her husband stood by the barricade, fists clenched, helpless to intervene in what was technically part of the show. It was a stark reminder that in this business, your body is the canvas for someone else's masterpiece, and tonight, the painting was a tragedy. The trust required to let someone beat you with a weapon is immense, and in the quiet of that locker room, one had to wonder if that trust had been permanently fractured. Looking back, that night at the Staples Center was the pivot point for an entire industry. We thought we were watching a simple heel turn for Charlotte Flair, a moment to heat up a rivalry. But in hindsight, it was the night the Ronda Rousey experiment truly began its end. Surviving the figure eight and the kendo stick attack didn't make her a sympathetic hero to the WWE universe. Paradoxically, it made them turn on her. They saw her bleed, and instead of rallying, they smelled blood. The twist is that the brutal hold she survived wasn't the leg lock. It was the crushing weight of expectation. That night proved that no amount of judo gold or pay-per-view buys could protect you from the carnival violence of professional wrestling. Ronda Rousey walked into that arena a superhero. She left it a survivor. And as we would learn in the months to come, being a survivor in this world is infinitely harder than being a winner. The video of that night is still uncomfortable to watch. Not because of the weapons, but because of the look in Ronda's eyes as she lay amidst the splintered wood. It was the look of someone realizing that the game they decided to play had no rules. And the people cheering for her survival were the same ones screaming for her destruction. She survived the hold, yes. But a part of the baddest woman on the planet died in that ring, sacrificed to the altar of a story that is still being told.